Hey everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at ethnography.
Ooh, ethnography.
Yeah, we've got this fascinating text all about how researchers get up close with cultures.
Right, getting right in there.
Like when you see those documentaries where someone lives with a remote tribe for a year,
Right?
we're going to find out how they do that.
Yeah, how they pull that off, what
Yeah,
kind of stuff they learn.
yeah. So
There's
first,
too many into it.
we got to talk about qualitative research in general.
The bigger picture.
Yeah. Our source defines it as a way to bridge the gap between missing information and finding answers.
Oh,
What does that even mean?
I think it means going beyond just numbers and stats,
Right.
to get at the why of human behavior.
Okay.
So imagine you're studying some community where people practice a certain ritual.
Uh-huh.
Quantitative research might tell you how many people participate,
Okay.
but qualitative research digs deeper.
Deeper.
Yeah, exploring the meaning and significance of that ritual for the people involved.
Oh, so it's like the difference between knowing that someone eats a certain food
Okay.
and understanding the cultural traditions and family history woven into every bite.
Yeah, exactly. It's like getting the whole story.
That makes sense.
And there are all sorts of ways to do qualitative research.
Okay.
Our source mentions 6 types, actually.
6.
Yeah. Case studies,
Okay.
ethnography,
Uh-huh.
historical methods,
Hmm.
grounded theory, and phenomenology.
Wow, that's a lot of options.
Yeah.
I'm guessing each one is like a different tool in a researcher's toolbox.
Yeah, you got it. So think of it this way.
Okay.
If you want to understand the experience of a specific person within a culture,
Okay.
a case study might be the way to go.
Okay.
But if you're interested in how people within a culture experience a particular emotion,
Okay.
like grief, then phenomenology might be better.
So it's about choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
Now, how does all of this compare to quantitative research?
Right.
The world of surveys and statistics.
Yeah. Well, it's not about one being better.
Right.
It's more about using the right approach for your research question.
Okay.
Quantitative research is great at measuring and testing hypotheses with large data sets.
Okay.
But qualitative research dives into the meaning and context behind those numbers,
Okay.
providing a much richer understanding of human behavior.
So if quantitative gives you the what,
Yeah,
qualitative gives you the why.
exactly.
And that why can be so valuable,
Absolutely.
especially in fields like psychology. Where
Right.
we're trying to understand all the complex interplay of cultural influences, social norms,
Yeah.
and individual experiences.
It's all connected.
Okay, let's zero in on ethnography now.
Okay.
Our source calls it the methodology of people,
Ooh, that's a good one.
which sounds pretty profound. Can you break that down for us?
Well, think of it as studying culture through deep immersion
Okay.
and participation.
Uh-huh.
Ethnographers spend long periods living within the community they're studying, observing daily life,
Wow.
building relationships with people who live there.
So it's like that travel show where the host tries to live like a local for a week,
Yeah.
but way more intense.
Way more
And
intense.
for a much longer time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Much longer.
And a key part of this immersion
Yeah.
is something called the chaining process,
Oh, the chaining process. I love that one.
where one participant introduces you to another
Right.
and so on.
Yeah.
It's this chain of connections that helps build trust
Absolutely.
and gain access to deeper insights.
Trust is key.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You're not just parachuting in as an outsider.
Right.
You're building relationships
Yeah.
and getting a true insider's perspective
Exactly.
to really understand ethnography.
Yeah.
It's helpful to be familiar with some key terms
Okay.
that ethnographers use.
The lingo.
Yeah. Our source highlights 4.
4. Okay, let's hear them.
Symbols,
Okay.
cultural patterning,
Mm-hmm.
tacit knowledge,
Ooh, tacit knowledge.
and situational reduction.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Okay, let's unpack those one by one.
All right.
Symbols. Those are pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like a flag representing a nation or a specific handshake signifying a certain group.
Yeah, exactly. But it can go deeper than that.
Deeper.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, the way a culture uses colors.
Okay.
Like, think about the colors associated with mourning or celebration.
Hmm.
Those can be powerful symbols, too.
Interesting. So symbols are like the building blocks of meaning within a culture.
Yeah, I like that. The building blocks.
What about cultural patterning?
Ooh, cultural patterning. That's
Ah.
where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
That takes those individual symbols and looks at how they relate to each other
Okay.
to create these broader patterns of behavior and belief. So, for example,
Right.
a culture's clothing style
Okay.
might be connected to their religious beliefs, their social hierarchy,
Okay.
or even the climate they live in.
It's like a giant puzzle where each piece is a symbol.
Okay.
And cultural patterning helps us see the bigger picture they create.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, tacit knowledge is fascinating.
Ooh, tacit knowledge.
It's the kind of knowledge that's so deeply ingrained
Okay.
that people don't even realize they have it.
Okay.
It's like the unspoken rules of social etiquette.
Okay.
You learn them by observing and experience, not through explicit instruction.
Like knowing when it's appropriate to make eye contact.
Right.
Or how close to stand to someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Those unspoken rules can be tricky in a new culture.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And finally, we have situational reduction,
Okay.
which recognizes that every social situation
Yeah.
is shaped by all these complex factors.
Right.
Economic conditions,
Yeah.
political systems, historical events,
So many things.
and so on.
Right.
So it's like saying you can't understand a cultural practice without considering the broader context it exists in.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging that culture is a dynamic and complex system.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We learned about qualitative research in general,
Yeah.
explored the nuances of ethnography, and even started to dissect some key terms.
We're getting there.
This is definitely making me think about my own cultural background in a whole new way.
I love that. It's so eye-opening.
Yeah.
It not only helps us understand other cultures, but also shines a light on our own assumptions.
Oh, totally.
And biases.
So we've talked about the what and the why of ethnography.
The basics.
Now let's get into the how.
Okay, the how.
What are the actual steps involved in conducting this kind of research?
Well, first,
Yeah.
the researcher needs to choose a culture or community to study.
Okay, so it starts with picking a destination for your cultural deep dive.
Right. Choosing your adventure.
What happens next?
Next comes a deep dive into existing information.
Oh, so like research on the research.
Yeah. Descriptions, historical accounts, anything to build a foundation.
So it's like doing your homework
Exactly.
before embarking on a big adventure.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And once they have a solid foundation,
Okay.
they need to identify the specific variables they want to explore.
Okay, so narrowing it down.
Right. This could be anything from social hierarchies and power dynamics to the role of rituals,
Okay.
or even how a community adapts to changing economic conditions.
I'm already sensing how much deeper this goes than just casual observation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What's next?
Well, then comes the really crucial part,
Okay.
gaining entry into the community.
I imagine that takes time sensitivity
Yes.
and a genuine willingness to connect with people.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It really does. This phase is all about building trust, you know, explaining the purpose of the research and making sure everyone's comfortable. It's not about barging in with a camera crew.
Right.
It's about building those genuine connections and respect.
It sounds like the researcher's people skills are just as important as their academic credentials.
Oh, absolutely. And once that trust is established,
Yeah.
then the real magic happens.
Okay.
Cultural immersion. Ethnographers spend months, sometimes even years,
Wow.
living within the community, participating in daily life, observing interactions, and really getting a feel for the nuances
Okay.
that make this culture unique.
Talk about dedication. It almost sounds like a method actor preparing for a role.
Yeah,
You have to truly embody the experience to understand it.
that's a great analogy. And throughout this immersion,
Yeah.
the researcher is collecting data
Uh-huh.
through interviews, field notes, sometimes even recordings.
Okay.
But it's not just about passively recording. It's about actively engaging with the community,
Okay.
asking insightful questions, and constantly refining their understanding.
It's like being a cultural detective,
Yeah,
piecing together clues to solve the mystery.
exactly. And once all that data is gathered,
Okay.
the researcher moves on to analysis,
Analysis.
looking for patterns, themes,
Okay.
and ultimately developing a theory that sheds light on what they've observed.
So it's a journey from raw experience to structured understanding.
It is.
Now, you mentioned earlier that ethnography can help us understand our own cultural background
Oh, yeah.
in a new light.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
We're all immersed in our own cultures from the day we're born.
Okay.
We absorb beliefs, values, practices
Yeah.
without even realizing it.
Right.
It's like breathing air.
Yeah.
It's so natural we don't even think about it.
But when you step outside of that bubble,
Yes.
and encounter a completely different way of life,
Right.
you suddenly become aware of all those unspoken assumptions
Yeah,
that you've been
right.
carrying around.
Exactly. It's like seeing yourself in a mirror
Yeah.
for the first time. You start to question things you've always taken for granted.
Good.
Like, why do we greet people this way? Why do we celebrate certain holidays?
Okay.
Why do we eat certain foods?
So ethnography is like a cultural wake-up call.
In a way, yes. It forces you to examine your own cultural lens
Yeah.
and recognize that there are many different ways of being in the world,
Good.
all equally valid and meaningful.
And that realization can be incredibly powerful.
Oh, it is.
Both personally and professionally.
Absolutely.
Speaking of professional applications.
Yes.
Can you give us some examples of how ethnography is used in the real world?
Absolutely. One area where it's super valuable is product development.
Okay.
And marketing. Imagine you're a company designing a new product
Okay.
for a specific cultural group. Ethnographic research can help you understand the needs, desires, values of your target audience, ensuring that your product resonates with them.
So instead of just guessing what people want, you're actually going out there talking to them, observing how they live, and understanding what matters.
Precisely. It's about going beyond superficial market research and getting to the heart of what motivates people.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between designing a product that simply works and one that people actually love.
And it's not just limited to products. Ethnography is also used in healthcare to understand how cultural beliefs influence health outcomes, in education to develop teaching methods, and even in urban planning to create more inclusive cities.
Wow, the applications are really endless.
They are.
It's like a secret weapon for understanding the human experience.
I love that. Now, our source mentions two main types of ethnography, macro and micro.
Macro and micro.
Macro ethnography focuses on larger cultural groupings, like studying American culture as a whole, while micro ethnography zooms in on specific groups, like a particular neighborhood or occupational group.
So it's like the difference between looking at a forest and examining a single tree.
Exactly. Both perspectives are valuable, but they provide different levels of analysis.
And then there's the distinction between emic and etic perspectives.
Oh, yes. Emic and etic.
Emic being the insider's view, and etic being the outsider's.
Exactly.
So emic is like seeing the world through the eyes of someone who grew up in that culture. While etic is more like an objective observation from someone outside.
Exactly. And both perspectives are important for a holistic understanding. Imagine trying to understand a culture's religious practices from only an outsider's perspective. You'd miss the deep personal meaning for people within that culture. That's why considering the emic perspective is crucial.
It's like getting both sides of the story.
Yes.
The insider's experience and the outsider's observation.
Right. And it's important to remember both emic and etic perspectives are subjective. The researcher's own background will shape how they interpret the data.
So there's no such thing as a completely objective observer.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of your own biases and to strive for objectivity.
This whole discussion of immersion and observation makes me wonder about the practicalities of conducting this kind of research.
That's the nitty-gritty.
What are some of the challenges that ethnographers face?
Well, one of the biggest can be simply gaining access to the community you want to study. Building trust takes time and effort. It's not always easy to convince people to let you into their lives.
Especially if you're coming from a very different background. I imagine there can be a lot of suspicion.
Absolutely. And even once you've gained access, there's the challenge of navigating cultural differences. And avoiding faux pas. What's polite in one culture could be offensive in another.
So there's a constant need for sensitivity and awareness.
Definitely. And then there's the challenge of absorbing all the information. It's demanding, both physically and emotionally.
It sounds like it takes a certain type of person to thrive in that kind of environment.
It does.
Someone who's adaptable, patient, and genuinely curious.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And of course, there's the challenge of analyzing all that data.
Making sense of it all.
It's not just about describing. It's about developing a deeper understanding of the underlying patterns.
So it's like being a detective. And a cultural interpreter.
That's a great way to put it. Now, despite all these challenges, ethnography can be incredibly rewarding.
Okay.
It allows you to connect with people, learn new ways of seeing the world, and contribute to our understanding of human culture.
It sounds like a truly transformative experience.
It is.
Now, our source emphasizes the ethical responsibilities, respect for participants, confidentiality, informed consent.
So important.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. Ethnographic research involves building deep relationships and delving into sensitive topics.
Right.
It's crucial to approach this work with respect and care, ensuring participants are treated ethically and their privacy is protected.
It's about recognizing that you're working with real people.
Exactly. And that means obtaining informed consent, making sure they understand the purpose of the research, and have the right to withdraw. It also means protecting their identities and keeping their information confidential.
So it's a balance between gathering information and protecting the people involved.
Absolutely. Ethnographers have a responsibility to ensure their research benefits the community, not exploit them.
It sounds like there's a lot of trust involved.
There is.
Not just between the researcher and the participants, but also between the researcher and the wider academic community.
Definitely. Ethnographers have a responsibility to conduct their research with rigor and integrity, ensuring their findings are accurate and unbiased.
And that brings up an interesting question for you, our listener.
Okay.
How can we, as consumers of information, critically evaluate the findings of ethnographic research?
That's a great question. It's important to consider the researcher's background, their methodology, and the potential for bias. Look for studies that acknowledge their limitations and present a balanced perspective.
So it's like being a savvy consumer. You wouldn't buy a product without reading the reviews, right?
Exactly. The same critical thinking should apply to information.
Especially when it comes to complex topics like culture.
Absolutely. It's about being informed, questioning assumptions, and seeking out multiple perspectives.
And remembering that culture is complex.
Yes.
And constantly evolving.
It is.
What might be true for one group might not be true for the entire culture.
Exactly. So stay curious, ask questions, and be open to learning. That's the essence of ethnography and the key to understanding our world.
It's amazing how ethnography can open our eyes to those cultural blind spots we have.
It really is.
You know, it makes me think about those classic cross-cultural misunderstandings. Like showing up an hour early for a dinner party.
Oh, no.
In a culture where being fashionably late is the norm.
Right, where it's expected. Those little cultural quirks can make a big difference.
Totally. And it's not just about avoiding awkward situations either.
No.
It's about understanding the deeper values that shape those behaviors.
So true. For example, in some cultures, time is linear and precise. While in others, it's much more fluid.
That's so interesting. It's like those differences we might see as strange actually make perfect sense in their own context.
Exactly. And that's where ethnography comes in. It helps us bridge those divides by providing that deeper understanding.
Okay, so let's get back to those practical applications. You mentioned ethnography is used in product development and marketing. Can you give us a real-world example?
Sure. Imagine a company developing a new smartphone app for a global market.
Global app.
Ethnographic research could involve sending researchers to different countries.
Makes sense.
To observe how people use their phones. They might spend time in homes, workplaces, public spaces, observing how people interact with technology.
So it's like becoming a fly on the wall.
Exactly. And this research can be so valuable. For example, they might discover that people in one culture prefer voice commands.
Interesting.
Or that people in another culture rely heavily on their phones for social networking.
Those are insights you wouldn't get from a survey.
Exactly. Ethnography lets you see how people actually use technology, which can lead to better designs.
That makes sense. Now, you also mentioned healthcare.
Oh, yeah. Healthcare is a great example.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you're a healthcare provider working with a large immigrant population. Ethnographic research could help you understand their beliefs about health and illness. You might discover that certain groups rely on traditional healers or that cultural practices influence their diet.
Interesting. So it's about understanding those cultural factors that can influence their health.
Exactly. And this understanding can be so important
Okay.
for providing effective healthcare, for example.
Yeah.
It might lead to incorporating traditional healing practices or developing culturally tailored materials.
That makes so much sense. It's about meeting people where they are.
Exactly. And it's not just about respecting different cultures.
Okay.
It's also about recognizing that cultural diversity can enrich our understanding of health and well-being.
Like different cultures having different strengths.
Exactly. And that's one of the most exciting things about ethnography.
What's that?
It's a constant process of learning.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Into the world of ethnography.
I covered a lot.
We covered the basics, the applications, the ethical considerations.
All of the important stuff.
I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for this method.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's been so great talking with you about this.
The pleasure was all mine.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Until next time, keep learning and keep diving.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us keep creating valuable content like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our community for more insights.